is Lorraine Halliwell, so Ciara, stage is yours.
Thanks, Ilka. Thanks, Ilka. I just want to say thank you, especially to the Finnish Sports Psychology Association for inviting me here. It's my first time in Finland, and I'm really enjoying it so far. And to Sari and the team and Ilka and all for looking after me. I'll just introduce myself. My presentation is similar to Wayne, and then there's some differences as well. So today I'm just going to look at preparing athletes and preparing teams for the actual games, and looking at different systems and different how we implement and how I work some of the programmes in Ireland. And then tomorrow I will look at specifically at my role, which is a little bit different to HQ Sports Psych. I was the holding camp sports psych at London, and actually on-site sports psychology support at the actual games. Okay, so my background, I'm just actually finishing up my PhD at the moment. I've submitted it, and hopefully in January, my Viva time, I'll get the deal sealed. I'm an accredited sports psychology with support provider with the Irish Institute of Sport. So we have a structured system to actually get accredited every 5 years with the actual Institute of Sport. I'm an actual lecturer. That's my day job. We have a MSc program in applied sport and exercise psychology in the college university that I work at, and I deliver the sports psychology modules as well. What I work with now are basically individual athletes and actual teams as well. One of the sports we would have in Ireland that you don't have here would be Gaelic. You may have seen it on the telly, like hurling and football. It would be a traditional Irish sport. The teams are actually amateur, but you would have up to 82,000 people actually attending matches. So the athletes don't actually get paid, but they are actually under the same pressures, the same emotional kind of drains, just like any other athletes, even though it is an actual amateur sport. Then, in preparation for Rio, I'm currently working with Badminton Ireland. We had 2 wrestlers at the European Olympic Games. My main Olympic sport at the moment will be modern pentathlon. Do you know that sport? It's like the five events in the one day. So the current European champion is actually Irish. She's Arthur Langan O'Keefe, the male. And we're hoping to maybe qualify 2 more athletes for the actual games as well. I work with a shot putter, a Paralympic shot putter, and also we have a curling team, but we have no curling rinks in Ireland. So that was a bit of a jump for me. So our curling team is based in Scotland, but they're Irish. So in preparing them for they didn't make it to the Olympics, for the Winter Olympics, but my sole focus would be the summer games, and we don't really have winter sports in Ireland then. And I do work in team environments. I also work with jump jockeys, professional jockeys on horses. So we'd have a long tradition of equestrian and jump jockeys in Ireland then as well. So what I'm going to look is models of service delivery. My philosophy actually as an actual service provider then, working in team sports, support structures, kind of interactions, and just some personal reflections. I don't know if you know this guy, who this golfer is. Anyone know who this golfer is? Yeah? Paul Carrington, yes, okay. So he's a professional golfer on the European circuit. Anybody that know who the guy to the right is? Wayne Halliwell is not allowed to answer this. To the guy eating the ice cream. Heard of Bob Rotella? Okay, one of the prominent sports psychologists. Actually, he's co-wrote some books with Wayne, and works quite a lot in high performance in relation to golf. And I kind of like this picture because it comes to, sometimes when we think about sports psychology, and I suppose it's really on the field or what's actually happening in the moment, sports psychology. It isn't always one-to-one type actual sessions. It's that taking a bit of time out, having a bit of reflection, maybe relaxing actually in the moment and being able to perform. But really for my ethos, the aim is for self-reliance and empowerment, to actually make myself redundant, to make myself work myself out of a job, really, essentially, that the athlete should have develop the skills and should be confident and should be able to control their emotions while they're actually performing. But also some of the points that Wayne hit on this earlier, that maintaining performance is also really important, not just constantly striving. Maintenance is okay, particularly from a physical and mental perspective. So how our services are structured in Ireland is that they are centralised and they are also decentralised from a sports science and medical approach. We have an Institute of Sport, which will be based in Dublin, where we have athletes similar to an institute here. It's in the process of being built at the moment. It will be a multi-sport arena, and athletes would have all of their sports psych and medical services in the one place. So they would have the physio there, they'd have a doctor there, they have access to a sports psych, they have nutritionists, all in the one actual facility. The problem with that is when it's centralised, you might have people who are sailors, but they're over at the coast and they are 300 kilometres away. So we have decentralised approaches as well. So my role would be that I would work at the Institute of Sport, but I would also move around and work with what we call national governing body. So I might work, like with Pentathlon Ireland, one particular sport, badminton, they look after me and I work specifically with them as well. So we have centralised approach, but we also have a decentralised approach where sports psychs would move out and go to different centres of excellence throughout the country as well. So the problem with, I suppose, really from linking up and actually preparing athletes for the actual games is when everything is centralised, and maybe I'm working 300 kilometres away with an athlete or with a team, it's about being very proactive about linking up the actual services. The services that are available to the athlete are also dependent on the funding. So different athletes get different funding and get different access to services. So the athletes who are at the top rung, so podium-based athletes, would have complete access to all sports science and medical team. Athletes who are in a more development type programme may get a number of nutrition supports, a number of sports psych sessions. So the actual services that each athlete gets is graded depending on, and I don't make that decision, I just work within the system, what type of funding that they actually get. So it isn't equal for all athletes. There'd be a number, or some people have unlimited access depending on who they are. The problem, I suppose, then is I must be proactive. So they might work with me 300 kilometres away, but they have a nutrition support that they get funded for in Dublin. But maybe that athlete I need to know, there could be an eating problem, or what is their body fat at the moment? I need to pick up the phone, I need to send that email, I need to make that connection, or it just doesn't happen. Or the coach says something to you. So it's about being proactive and actually linking up the supports and really being a member of a multidisciplinary team. It isn't just one person or you working in isolation. It's very limited what you can do. But if all the sciences work together, we can have a better athlete, a happier athlete, and ultimately lead to a better performance as well. Also within that, you may actually need to link for maybe they need specific support in a particular area. So I could go back to the coach and I'd say, I think this person needs nutrition support, I think this person needs to see the doctor or whatever it is. So I can link them up to the other supports that they actually need in some way. Okay, so there's different models, and the different models are often based on the different types of sports that I found to be effective service delivery. So what you'd have in our GAA, so in our amateur type sports, it would be more teams who are on a very, very restricted budget, looking at kind of general team meetings, not much one-to-one support. You might have maybe somebody who has a particular issue that they want to talk to somebody out, but it would be just general team identity, team culture, looking at specific performance issues for that actual team, but can be quite informal. You might only meet them once a month, once every 2 months. So that's the first type of structure. What I would actually, I suppose, is we would have a lot within this, a lot of coaches within the circle who would actually call and go, can you come into my team and give them a big motivational talk? There's a big match on Sunday. I would advise anybody from a sports psych professional to not, I suppose, discredit your own services. And really, those types of support, if the team is not ready, what I say, my magic wand, I'm not Harry Potter, I don't have magic words. If the team are not ready, they're not ready, they're not going to perform on Sunday. What I say, I also risk my reputation to go in and just do the one-off magic type talk. So avoid those types of talks. But you do get that 1-800, I need a sports psychologist, call Ciara. So avoid those ones. Okay, effective service delivery in kind of a mix of workshops, may have some individual sessions as well. Monthly, maybe a mix of face-to-face and some workshops as well. There is some coach involvement in that as well, and that's extremely important. I'm going to come back to that point as well. Sometimes the players will lead on particularly in a team environment, the players will actually say, I want to speak with somebody, or can I work with somebody? Or sometimes the players need a little bit of a push. They need a little bit of support. So the coach actually has to identify, can we get you to actually talk to somebody? So athletes don't always put up their hand and say, no, I actually need to speak to somebody. The best kind of service delivery model really is a regular involvement with the actual members and with the team management. So you'd have face-to-face, and then within the face-to-face I might have email after, or I would follow up with worksheets, or maybe a quick phone call. How are you getting on? How are things going? So even when they're away from me, even if it's distance is a problem as well, I work with some teams and athletes who are 300 plus kilometres away from me. A little phone call, 5 or 10 minutes. Particularly, I find helpful is, I find it quite difficult for myself to just initiate any kind of service just via a phone, but if I have had that face-to-face contact with them, a quick follow-up with a phone call, with an email, is fine then, once you've made that connection with the athletes. So what you're trying to do is individualise the service. You would travel to particular meetings, you would go to particular competitions with them. I would see them, I would watch them actually maybe in the dressing room, their pre-performance routines. So being available for as many activities as possible. What also I find that my role also spills into is the lifestyle management role as well. So the things that affect the athlete away from the actual sport. So their college, their relationships, their family. They might be working part-time, juggling financial situations. They are the major things that we find sometimes impact on actual performance. So sometimes my role spills into lifestyle management as well. So it could be time management, organising themselves maybe when they're coming up to an exam period in college. That's part of really my role as well. So career guidance and career transition fits into that as well. And what do I do when I'm in the team environment? Kind of the key areas are education. So educating the actual athletes about the skills that they actually need to develop to cope with the actual demands of training, to challenge them. So maybe the way they're thinking, the way that they're working, the way that they have always approached and managed their conflict is not the best way to do it. So to challenge them to think, and to think critically about their systems. Problem solving, that's a big one. So help the coaches and the actual athletes figure out solutions, and try in some ways what we call positive conflict. It's not always good that everybody agrees with everybody. But when we don't agree with it, it's not a personal thing. It's for the betterment of the whole team. So to create some kind of an objective view where you can actually cause change and actually have some positive conflict within the team as well. Because I have no role on who gets picked for the team or team selection, the athletes sometimes feel an awful lot freer to express themselves and open up about particular issues that are affecting their performance, because they know that I don't get to pick the team. So general support for them. Okay, so observation and my interactions with the athletes pre-games, and observation, feedback and training, competition environment, understanding the unique culture of each sport as well. So I'm not an expert in all of these sports. I have never participated in most of the sports that I actually work with, but I actually find that that's actually quite helpful sometimes, because you're not a fan, and you are there to learn. You immerse yourself in the culture of the actual sport. So it's not, I wouldn't see it as a disadvantage that you haven't been a performer in a particular area. Yes, I'm passionate about sport. Yes, I'm interested in people and I want to hear their stories and I want to work with them. They're the core elements. No, I'm not an expert in curling. Curling is on at 3 a.m, maybe on a Sunday night when you've come in from a nightclub on the TV in Ireland. I've never seen it until I actually went to the European Games and went, oh, sweeping brushes, okay, this is what this is about. So I had to immerse myself and learn the language and learn the culture and connect with the athletes in a language that they could understand, in a way that they could connect with. And then we work together, and some of the skills and some of the issues are still the same no matter what sport you're in or what athlete you're actually working with as well. So increasing the athlete's self-awareness and understanding of their thoughts and their behaviours and how to deliver under pressure as well. So again, exactly what Wayne said, focusing on what you can control, but reminding yourself all the other things that you come into contact with that you can cope. So just developing an attitude, a real can-do attitude about certain things, reminding yourself that you can cope, and looking at what are the most likely things that are going to occur. So planning for the things that will, the what if type of scenarios that will, what will happen. When we're looking at individualised mental skills training programs, again, you know all this stuff. You're looking at confidence preparation, the focus, a reset is quite important as well. The reset, the mindset, concentration, goal setting, self-talk, routines, rituals and visualization. But one of the key things is trust. I need to connect. I need to make that connection. If I can connect with that athlete, and when you're in an Olympic scenario, maybe you have 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. I'm standing in a lift. I've just picked them up in the airport in the car. I have to connect instantly. And if I can get that person and that athlete to trust me, then they will talk. Then they will expose their weaknesses. So it takes time. And in Olympic scenarios, you don't have time to build those relationships. But in preparing athletes, you do have time. So to prepare somebody from a sports psych perspective takes years or may take months to actually really build that relationship where you can work on the areas that they need to target. Okay, so interactions with athletes and teams pre the games then, kind of the core issues then, competition-specific preparation and managing emotions then. So competition-specific preparation, so getting as much information as you can about the sport, the venue, the timing of the actual events, all of those things are extremely crucial and key. So educating and getting yourself about as much information about those things. And how to manage your emotions while you're at the actual game. What are the things that are likely going to happen while you're there? Discussing those. It's not about avoiding those issues. It's about discussing those. If this happens, how will I respond? So I often say to my athletes is that we don't do reactions. We do responses though. So how would we actually respond to those scenarios that might happen? Managing sources of frustration, particularly if you're dealing with a team, you're going to have conflict with actual teams. You're going to have people who got selected, some people who didn't get selected. You have people moaning, not on the team, on the team. So you have a lot of conflict issues then as well, and you'd have a lot of emotional issues around those things. So teams are a little bit different when you must deal with them pre-games then. Off the field issues, relationships, financial, college, career, funding. I got to perform, or my funding gets cut, or I'm not going to be able to continue to train. All of those things are important. But even pre the games, things like, do my family members have tickets? Where will I see them? Working out a plan and a strategy around those things are extremely important as well. Looking for key kind of flags for any type of overtraining, burnout or underperformance, tackling those issues again, being reactive and being proactive about it as opposed to reacting to it if it actually happens then. Looking at Olympic specific preparation, venue prep, and then even if they obviously they can't get to the venue, can you get videos? Can you implement visualization? Can you teach them imagery skills? Can you break down the actual venue for them so they can actually see it and prepare and actually plan and train the exact time that they will actually perform at? And I suppose this isn't something. One thing that I know we're talking about an awful bit of going to Rio or going to the Winter Olympics. What happens when you come back? Maybe it was an absolute flop, which happens, or it was absolute, you come home with a medal, best case scenario. But what happens post-games is extremely important as well. So we would have a plan and strategy so to actually transition people while they're in the games, to actually have some contact with a sports psych, and then when they actually come home, they actually undergo out after the games, up to 2 months after, they begin some sports psych support work as they transition from the games, depending on how it went. So for some people, it can be a really big high, and then it's a big low, or there's a low, and then it affects them in some way. So what happens after the games has a big impact on our role as a sports psych as well. Also, some athletes might be retiring. This could be their last Olympics, so their career is finished. So to transition an athlete onto something else, or have they a plan or strategy into place, but before they go to the games, about what they're going to do afterwards. And post-event debriefs and evaluations after, we always meet together as an organisation and debrief the actual events then. So when I work with coaches then, my interactions with coach and staff about how to actually prepare athletes. So this is kind of what we're doing at the actual moment. So I'm actually agreeing a mental skills training program with the coach. So I can't be at every training session. I won't be at every training session, but the coach is going to be at every training session. So if there's a good communication between myself and the actual coach, I can let them know what type of things, their goals we've outlined, what type of skills they need to be working on. The coach can actually monitor those types of skills as well and implement some of the things that we're working on with the sports psych actually in training as well. So there's a link in everything. Everything is multidisciplinary. Building an elite team culture as well. So what actually is elite? And our unique team identity. So what actually is Team Ireland, I suppose, is really important. And we're really small. We're a really small country with a really small population, with a really small team that goes to the Olympics. And that was one of the things we spoke about and actually addressed. Like, we don't have a building. We get a couple of apartments when we go to the games, okay? But not being small is actually really unique. It can actually work as a really positive thing, seeing it as an actual asset as opposed to being a negative thing. When we look to see what other countries have, what they get this or they have more facilities, we have lots of things that are going. Sometimes being really small and being very focused is a really unique signature strength of an actual team as well. So identifying and linking that with the actual teams. Also, I will also look for patterns and trends in what the actual athletes actually say as well. So as I'm working pre-Olympics, so at this time, nine months out, what type of feedback am I getting from the actual athletes? Is there, maybe, are they complaining about certain things, or maybe the food, or their interactions with something? Not just a once-off complaint. Is there a pattern and trend in the feedback that the actual athletes are giving me? If there's a pattern and trend, I need to feed that back to the coach. But it's anonymous. I don't say, who said this? Okay? It's actually giving back anonymous feedback to the coach about the actual program as well is extremely important. So representing the coaches, or representing the athletes to the coaches with their feedback also. So it's a two-way process. Other things like set pieces, so free taking, in Gaelic sport, or the reset, what we'd have in fencing. So actually in fencing, in pentathlon, you might fence 30 people in that day, but you have just lost the last 5 fights. Now I get up for number 6. Am I going to lose number 6? Or am I going to try and win? So the reset, the refocus, those things are really important. So looking at specific skills that are needed for each actual athlete and each sport that I actually work with as well. Again, competition match specific preparations that are unique for your event that's going to happen actually at the games. Again, conflict negotiation. So sometimes athletes and coaches don't get on. Okay, and it gets to sometimes a level where you might need somebody, a third party, to actually mediate. So to actually sit down and mediate with the coach and the actual athlete. It's very, very rare, but it also has happened to me where I've had to mediate between a coach and an athlete where there's been so much conflict and fighting, we had to actually pull them out of actually training and meet separately. So that can happen as well. So to open the lines of communication. And now, that in that particular scenario, the coach and the athlete get on well, but there was a lot of conflict for a long time. We would also have performance reviews, and I would submit as a sports psych a review on where they are, their training diary, kind of feed into the actual performance reviews as well. And there might be player or athlete's performance issues specific to one athlete. So somebody maybe is nervous, or their energy is too low, whatever it is, you find out what that issue is and individualise your feedback for them. Okay, so interactions with other support staff is extremely important as well. So again, seeing yourself as part of the sports science and medical team of all of the ologies that actually support the athletes. One of the big things that obviously again is if an athlete gets injured, how will I link in with the physio to set goals, to actually work on maybe mental skills that will actually help and improve their injury recovery as well. What can I do and how can I assist them to get ready to return to play as well? I can't work in isolation. If I work in isolation, it doesn't really work. So I again must be proactive. I speak to the doctor, I speak to the physio. Maybe don't speak to me, but I pick up the phone and make the call, make the connection, and we work on some of the things that maybe a physio has identified or the doctor has identified, and work with that in the actual sports psych session as well. We look at reasons why maybe other recovery strategies, so their nutrition, maybe they need to work on maybe a particular strength program or particular stretching, whatever it is. Are they complying to their rehabilitation exercise as well? And if they're not complying, how can we get them to comply? Maybe they need to be communicated to differently. Maybe we need to work it a little bit different. You need to do different things for different athletes. Some you push, yes, some you pull, and some you just put your arm around and walk beside them. It's just different, and there'll be different things at different times for athletes as well. Again, if it's a career-ending injury, so they are finishing their career, so not to say, okay, you're cut, see you, bye. So to transition the athlete out of the program as well is very important. So even if an athlete is not training, we would still have so many sessions with a sports psych to transition them away from the actual program so they can leave when they're actually ready as well. I would have athletes do training diaries, so sharing the training diaries, monitoring their mood, monitoring their sleep, again looking for patterns. And if there's patterns start to emerge with certain things, maybe letting the doctor know, letting the physio know, again making those connections as well. So we're looking for possible cases of overtraining and burnout if we monitor mood and monitor sleep as well. But again, proactive I think is the key. The physiotherapist needs to be your friend, because the athletes often open up and talk very freely with the physio, and they spend an awful lot of time with a physiotherapist as well. So again, get to know your physiotherapists that work with the athletes. They may have some input to give you, because athletes seem to talk very freely when they work with physiotherapists. Okay, another kind of important thing that we prepare and we put in a particular strategy for before the games is somebody who is a first-time actual Olympian, or actually a first-time coach going to the games. So they present new challenges as well. So what we do, we'd actually have, similar to this type of conference, we are having our conference now in 3 weeks' time, so we will actually bring all the coaches together who are, maybe they haven't got athletes qualified just yet, so the ones that have athletes qualified and the ones that are likely to get athletes together, we bring all the coaches together, we bring all the sports science and medical team together who will be at the games into the one room for one day and go over all of these types of scenario. So what we will do is actually get coaches who have been to multiple games to actually share their experiences, tell stories, and link the new coaches, maybe their first games, with the coaches who have been to multiple games and actually share their stories. Preparing athletes as well for the kind of X factor. When you go to the games or you see your hero, you do see maybe Usain Bolt eating his porridge, whatever he's doing. So there's a kind of wow factor to the whole thing. It's definitely, that's part of it as well. So getting the athletes ready for the wow factor or in the village, showing them footage, getting athletes in to speak to other athletes who have been at games, sharing experiences, telling stories. This is how the athletes will share and actually learn as well. We have a new challenge for Ireland, I suppose, that golf is now an Olympic sport, and we will have, there's a lot of talk that because Rory McIlroy is going to be one of the golfers. So he is, I suppose, from an Irish perspective, he has the X factor kind of approach. So getting athletes ready for being around maybe their heroes is part of preparation for the Olympic Games as well. What are the issues? Going through brainstorming with all the coaches, with the athletes, what are the issues that can arise, and putting in a plan in place. And I'll go through some more of those tomorrow then as well. Okay, so what have I learned? It really takes time to build relationships, and it takes time for people to actually trust you. So being very cautious and not jumping in all the time, just sitting back, watching. As a sports psych, it's sometimes hard to justify your presence or your cost. You feel like you have to look busy all the time or do something. There isn't a way you should look. You don't have necessarily an office that people come and meet you. It's when the athletes are on their downtime, maybe when they're having their coffee or they're in between training sessions, or they're having their breakfast or their lunch, that's when you are the actual busiest. We worked, and I'll go through this again tomorrow, we didn't have an appointment-based system. It was just me going around, speaking, talking to people, loitering around, chatting, going training. Now, somebody might say, would you speak to somebody at a certain time? No problem, I'll see you at that time. But we didn't work it like a physio or from a medical where you'd actually make an appointment and go speak to somebody. So it's sometimes hard. You feel like I'm kind of standing around and I'm watching a lot of training, but that's okay. Just you being there is okay. It gives the athletes or the coaches or the support staff the opportunity to speak to you, and that's okay. But you often feel like, because there isn't sometimes hard data that will kind of support your work, don't feel like you have to kind of, I suppose, jump into every situation that it actually presents. So as Stephen Bull calls it, he was the sports psych for British cricket, it's called strategic loitering. There's a lot of hanging around, and there's a lot of coffee, and there's a lot of tea, but that's part of you being available to speak to people as well. If I don't have the coach's support, I've actually had to turn down jobs that I really wanted to do because I knew that I wouldn't be able to implement and work in an effective way. Because the coach maybe had an idea of what sports psychology was, how it should be delivered, but not necessarily the best practice and actually how to deliver the actual service. So I have walked away and turned down big jobs with big teams and big athletes because I knew that I wouldn't be able to do, I would be compromised in my way. So the lack of support from a coach will undermine. If the coaches buy into it, even if a coach doesn't really understand exactly every principle, that's absolutely okay. But if they support it and allow the athletes the time and speak about it and implement some of the things, that's okay. Lots of things. So definitely at the games and getting ready for the games, or even for the conference in 3 weeks, there's an element of just park your ego at the door. I packed bags, I went shopping, I collected athletes in cars from the airport. Great time to have a chat with people. I didn't say, well, this is my job, I'm the sports psych, I sit here, you come and see me at this time. It just doesn't work like that. To be really effective and to make the athletes and the sports staff members feel relaxed, you just have to get stuck in. If I had to fill ice baths, I filled ice baths. No big deal. So leave your ego at the door and get stuck in and actually help out with the team as well. I also found kind of sitting in on some video analysis or performance analysis of the actual teams or matches was also helpful, particularly in a sport that I'm not familiar with. So engaging with the performance analysis team also gives you an insight into the technical, the tactics, the language, the body language, and you'll be able to actually go over and actually take away some of those videos and look at them in your own time as well. As a sports psych practitioner, hard data, again, is very difficult to come across. It's very difficult to say, well, I did X, and this made Y, and now this made this performance. It's not like that. Well, maybe Y happened and then X happened, but maybe this bit happened as well. So don't feel, I suppose, to constantly justify. It is hard to justify. It's the soft skills. It's the soft skills. Not always just the hard skills all the time. It's the soft skills with the people. Sometimes we can't quantify it and we can't put a number on it and we can't put a figure on it, but we know when we actually make a difference or we make that connection with somebody as well. So because of that, it's quite natural to doubt and have a little bit of lack of self-confidence sometimes about your own job. That's completely normal. Okay, so this is Kenny Egan. He was a silver medalist in the light heavyweight boxing final at the actual Beijing Olympics, and I kind of liked what he said. All the hard training is important, the diet and all of that. It's like a big jigsaw, but the biggest piece is the head upstairs. If you're right in the head, you're laughing and everything is perfect. So I just thought he kind of encapsulated and summarised really well, and he worked closely with a sports psych, and the boxing team will be our most successful sport in Ireland. And they have a full-time sports psychologist that works exclusively with the boxing team only. So some final thoughts, just to kind of wrap it all up, and I'll go into kind of more game-specific information then tomorrow, a little bit more applied then. Learn to remember the importance of the moments of silence, the moments of reflection and lessons learned. Recording your highlights at the end of the day. What went well? Capture them, because just like the athletes, if we don't capture them in our confidence kind of things, we forget about them and we move on to the next thing. Planning positive, practical action. Sometimes it's really difficult to be positive, positive, positive all the time, but I can be practical, 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 and I can be ready. So being reactionary as opposed to, or being proactive as opposed to reacting to situations then, and engaging in positive actions then. And also the reflection in evaluating my own actions. reviewing my performance as a performer, because when you're at the games or you're getting athletes ready for the games, you are a performer as well. You are being evaluated by everybody, so you must review your performance. Okay, thanks a million. Thanks for your time and attention.